You were never the man she loved. You were the character she cast in her private movie. And the second you went off script, she replaced you. That's not a love story. That's psychological theater. Carl Jung warned us about this. But you didn't listen. Now, it's time to. And this story isn't about blaming women. It's not about some red pill bullshit or whining about heartbreak. This is about me staring into a goddamn mirror and realizing I was never actually in love with her. I was in love with being loved. And let me tell you something nobody wants to say out loud. That kind of love will ruin you, quietly, slowly, while you're smiling in photos and calling it growth. It all started with her eyes. You know that look, the kind that makes you feel like the center of the King universe? Yeah, she looked at me like that. Like I was some mysterious goddamn masterpiece waiting to be discovered. I soaked it in. I drank it like a man crawling through a desert. But here's the part that'll punch you in the gut. She wasn't seeing me. She was seeing a character she made up. And I auditioned for the role without even knowing it. Every nod, every "I'm not like other guys," every "I'll protect you" or "I get you." I was writing myself into her movie. A movie I didn't direct. A movie I'd never even seen the script for. But damn, did I play my part well. Until I didn't. Until the day came when I said something that didn't fit the fantasy. When I failed to deliver one of those perfect emotional monologues. When I didn't smile at the right time or wasn't mysterious enough, broken enough, masculine enough, or whatever the hell she was projecting onto me. And just like that, she replaced me, quietly, emotionally, then physically. And I was left standing in the ruins of a love that never really existed, mourning a version of me I never King was. That's when I found Jung. No, not on purpose. I wasn't out there looking for enlightenment. I was just some wrecked dude at 3 a.m., typing SHT, like, why did she stop loving me? Into YouTube like it was the King Oracle of Delphi. And there he was, Carl Jung, the old Swiss wizard of the unconscious. He didn't whisper sweet nothings. He didn't coddle. He sliced through the bullshit like a surgeon on a warpath. And he said it plain. You weren't chosen. You were cast. That hit me like a punch to the sternum. Because it was true. I hadn't been loved for who I was. I was a projection, a role, a walking, talking, emotional puppet designed to fit the movie she had been rehearsing since she was 13. And the worst part? King volunteered. I let myself be chosen because I was too scared to choose myself. That's the kind of sentence that sits in your gut like glass. But we're not done yet. Because here's where the story twists. This isn't about her. It's about the me that let it happen. The me that smiled too much. That agreed when I didn't. That stayed silent when I should have spoken. That performed, adapted, morphed, and minimized himself just to keep the applause going. I had become a mask. And somewhere along the way, I forgot there was a man underneath. Let's stop right here and be real. You might think you're different. You might think, well, I wouldn't let a woman change me. Bullsh. We've all done it. Because nobody teaches boys how to stand alone. They teach us how to chase, how to win her heart, how to prove we're worthy. We grow up thinking love is something we earn, not something we choose to receive. We're taught that masculinity is something you gain through approval, that you become a man when she says so. That right there is the King trap. And every time you play into it, you hand your identity over like a goddamn poker chip, praying she doesn't walk away with it. I remember the first time I said no to her. Just no. Not even mean. Not even cold. Just honest. And she looked at me like I'd slapped her. Because the script broke. Because I stepped out of character. And the truth? The truth was, I liked saying no. I liked feeling that spine come back. But she didn't. Because women, not all, but many aren't in love with you. They're in love with the idea of you. And when you stop playing the idea, you're out. You become an inconvenience. An interruption to the fantasy. That's what Jung meant by projection. That inner movie in her mind, cast with roles you didn't even audition for. The hero, the fixer, the safe bet, the rebel, the mystery, the emotional therapist in a man's body. She doesn't even realize she's doing it. And neither did I. But now I see the signs. Let me tell you how this projection game works, and why it wrecks both men and women in ways they don't even see coming. She's not choosing you. She's choosing a role in her head, a role written by childhood wounds, Disney fairy tales, toxic church teachings, and her ex-boyfriend's betrayals. And you're the poor bastard trying to live up to a myth no one survives. And when you fail, she doesn't update the story. She just replaces the actor. You want to know the brutal truth? It's not her fault either. She's possessed by something she can't even name. Jung called it the animus, the inner masculine inside every woman. And when it's immature, unchecked, or never confronted, it becomes a tyrant. It moralizes without understanding. It argues just to dominate. It idolizes broken men and crucifies good ones. It turns every damn relationship into a battlefield, not because she's cruel, but because she's at war with herself and thinks you're the enemy. You ever wonder why some women keep picking toxic guys? Or why they lose interest the second a man starts showing stability, clarity, or emotional maturity? That's the animus. And if you don't recognize it, you'll get eaten alive by it. But here's where it gets worse. And maybe this part will K with your head. You confuse being wanted with being known. You think just because she touches your face, or says, "I've never met anyone like you," that you're finally being seen. You're not. You're being used. Not out of malice, but out of unconscious need. And the day you stop fitting the scene, she ghosts. She withholds. She tells you, "Something's changed," or "You're just not who I thought you were." And it shatters you. Because deep down you thought this time was different. But it wasn't. It was just your turn to wear the mask. Now, I know some of you are sitting there, fists clenched, heart racing, because this is your story. You're nodding. You're remembering. You're angry. You're heartbroken. You're confused. Good. That means you're finally waking the K up. Because I'm not telling you this to be cruel. I'm telling you this because until you see the game, you can't stop playing it. You'll just keep repeating it over and over, relationship after relationship, mask after mask, hoping this time someone will love the real you. But they never will. Not until you do. You know that silence that comes right after a breakup? Not the loud, screaming kind with slamming doors and shattered mugs. I'm talking about that hollow, bone-dry silence that creeps in when someone leaves and takes every bit of noise with them. The silence where your chest isn't even aching because the pain hasn't hit yet. That's where I lived for weeks. No music, no calls, just me, a flickering kitchen light, and the same damn question on repeat. What the FK did I do wrong? Let me tell you something ugly. I used to think heartbreak was about her leaving, her cheating, her choosing someone else. But the more I sat in that godforsaken silence, the more I realized I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the idea of being chosen, because I had built my worth around it. It sounds pathetic, right? It is. I thought if someone loved me hard enough, maybe I'd finally be enough. Maybe I'd finally silence that inner voice whispering, "You're not shit without her." And she did love me, but not me. Just the mask. The moment I stepped out of character, she cut the lights. No curtain call. No encore. Just darkness. That's when I lost it. Not in the movie scene way either. I'm not going to romanticize this part. I broke down. Ugly, crying on the floor. Puking in the shower. Screaming into a towel so the neighbors wouldn't call someone. I stopped eating. Didn't shower for 3 days straight. Grew a beard I didn't even recognize. I had spent years building a persona that looked invincible. And then it took one woman, one rejection to turn me into rubble. Now tell me that's healthy. Tell me that's masculine. Tell me that's being a man. But here's the K up part. Even in my lowest moments, I kept thinking, how do I win her back? How do I tweak the mask? How do I fix what I broke? I was still in the goddamn fantasy. Still performing. Still bending myself into emotional origami, trying to be lovable. And I didn't even know what love was. You see, when you're starving, you'll eat anything. Even lies. Even projections. Even the idea that your worth depends on someone else's gaze. Then one night, I don't know what possessed me. I wrote her a letter. Never sent it. Never will. But that letter? It was the first time I told the truth, not to her, to myself. I wrote, "I hate the way I need you." That sentence cracked something open in me. It hit like a hammer to the chest. Because I did. I hated the way I couldn't breathe without her texts. I hated the way I rehearsed every message to sound balanced and emotionally intelligent. I hated the way I shrunk myself when she was angry. I hated the way I apologized when I hadn't done a damn thing wrong. I hated the way I was slowly murdering myself, just to stay on stage. That's when the old Carl Jung line hit me like lightning. You are not a victim. You are a volunteer. Read that again. Let it slap you. I wasn't betrayed. I was complicit. I signed the contract. I picked up the mask. I stepped into the role. And I stayed long after my soul started screaming, "Get the FK out." Because staying felt safer than standing alone. And that's the real addiction, isn't it? It's not love we're hooked on. It's being needed. We'd rather perform than be rejected. We'd rather lie than be alone. We'd rather stay broken than risk being unseen. I realized I wasn't scared of heartbreak. I was scared of being invisible. So, I started tearing it all down. Every belief, every pattern, every romantic movie line still living rent-free in my brain. I asked the terrifying questions. What if love doesn't look like sacrifice? What if being chosen isn't the goal? What if I've been running from myself this entire fking time? And that's when it began. The descent, the digging, the unmasking. I wasn't becoming better. I was becoming honest. And that's a very different kind of pain. Because once you stop pretending, the entire world starts looking like a lie. You start seeing it in your friends' relationships. The silent resentments, the performative harmony, the emotional hostage-taking masked as intimacy. You see it in the couples who post romantic selfies while barely speaking at dinner. You see it in the guy who says, "Happy wife, happy life," while flinching when she raises her voice. You see it in the woman who says, "He just doesn't open up," while unconsciously punishing him every time he shows vulnerability. You see the game. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's when you get angry. Not at them, at yourself. Because you realize you were doing the exact same SHT. You realize you don't even know who the hell you are without the script. Without the need to be liked. Without the dream of being someone's everything. You realize you've been playing the game so long, you don't even know where your face ends and the mask begins. So you stop. You unplug. You sit in silence. You look in the mirror not to fix, not to adjust, not to pose. Just to see. And at first, you hate what you find. You see a scared boy in a grown man's body. You see a man who spent years being safe, stable, respectful, and absolutely King hollow. You see all the parts of yourself you buried because they were too much, too loud, too intense, too weird, too wild, too sensitive, too angry, too honest. You see your shadow. And for the first time, you don't run from it. You sit with it. You listen. You let the rage come. You let the sadness breathe. You let the old wounds speak. And they say, "We've been waiting for you." They don't tell you that becoming a man starts with dying. No, not your body, that would be too easy. I mean death by 1,000 invisible cuts. Death of illusions. Death of comfort. Death of who you thought you were, the nice guy, the provider, the protector, the one who always understands. You die, slowly, brutally, when you realize none of that shit ever made you real. It made you useful. It made you liked, but it didn't make you whole. And the day I understood that, I sat in my apartment, holding a whiskey glass like it was a F. King relic from my old life. No music, no TV. Just me, and a silence so thick, it felt like a second skin. I looked around, and realized I had spent my whole life performing for women, but I had never once sat down and asked, who the hell am I when no one's watching? And I couldn't answer. So I started digging. Individuation. That's the word Jung used. Sounds clinical, right? Like some New Age enlightenment seminar with breathwork and quinoa. But let me translate it for you. In real-world pain, individuation is the day you stop blaming women and start facing your fing self. Not the polished version, not the spiritual bypassing, the real you. The bitter, the insecure, the arrogant, the wounded. The little boy still hoping someone will finally clap for him and say, "You're enough." That's what I found. And I hated him. I judged him. I wanted to stuff him back into some deep closet and put on another mask, but it was too late. The lies were dead. The fantasy was cold. And I was finally alone with the one person I had never dared to confront. Me. You want to know what you really believe? Sit alone for 6 days. No distractions. No validation. No sexual attention. No likes. No texts. Just silence. Just your own breath and that voice in your head that whispers when everything else shuts the hell up. You'll hear it. It starts soft. Then it screams. Mine said, "You've never lived a day for yourself." That shattered me. I thought I was living with purpose. I thought I was serving. I thought I was doing the work. Turns out I was just surviving. Performing. Checking boxes. Staying lovable. Let me tell you something I never heard from any man growing up. No one is coming to save you. Not your mother. Not your girlfriend. Not your therapist. Not God. This is the part of the journey where everything burns. Where your personality, the one you've curated to be palatable, nice, acceptable, melts off your bones. And what's left? The animal. The raw, screaming, broken, brilliant, burning core of who you are. The soul you buried beneath 10 years of emotional manipulation and half-assed spiritual quotes. You want to be loved? Then become real. You want to be respected? Then stop negotiating with your shadow. You want to be free? Then let yourself die. Let the part of you that clings to being liked die. Let the part of you that lives for approval die. Let the part of you that tiptoes around women like they're gods with vaginas F, king die. Because that part of you was never you. It was a mask, a performance, a puppet, and it's killing you slowly. I remember the first time I said this out loud. I don't want to be chosen anymore. My voice cracked. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't angry. It was a whisper from somewhere deep in my chest, like a prisoner finally speaking after years in solitary confinement. I didn't want to be chosen. I wanted to be whole. And that was the beginning. The path from that moment forward wasn't pretty. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't some yoga in the mountains journey with sunsets and ocean soundtracks. It was war. Every morning, I woke up and fought the urge to reach out to her, to fix it, to be the good guy, to win her back. Every night, I battled the demons in my head that said, "You're unlovable without her. You were only valuable because she saw something in you. No one will ever choose you again." And every time that voice spoke, I stared it in the face and said, "Maybe that's true, but I'm still standing." That's the moment you start becoming a man. Not when you win, not when you get the girl, not when you heal, but when you choose yourself even when it king hurts. Even when nobody claps. Even when the whole goddamn world thinks you're cold, distant, or unhinged. Because here's what they never tell you about individuation. It's lonely as hell. Nobody congratulates you for walking away from codependence. Nobody throws a parade because you stopped performing. Nobody gives you a medal for not being emotionally needy anymore. But you know what you get? Peace. Not the fluffy kind. I'm talking about that solid, gritty, quiet peace that sits in your chest like a goddamn mountain. It doesn't cheer. It doesn't jump around. It just is. It's the voice that finally says, "You're not a mask. You're a man." You ever watch people squirm when you don't play your old role anymore? It's F, King fascinating. C, after you strip the mask off, after you crawl through the fires of self-confrontation and bury the boy who needed to be needed, something strange starts to happen. People don't know what to do with you. You're not who you used to be. And that makes them uncomfortable. Not because you're cruel, not because you're toxic, but because your presence now carries something they can't control. It's called authenticity. And in a world built on manipulation and performance, that SHT is terrifying. The first woman I dated after the collapse, let me tell you, she didn't stand a King chance. Not because she was wrong for me. She was actually brilliant, beautiful, strong. But because I refused to play the role she was used to. She said something sharp one night, trying to test me, get a rise, see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I just looked at her and said, "You don't get to talk to me like that." Silence. She blinked, paused, tried to laugh it off. And I repeated, "I mean it." That moment, that right there, that was the first time I'd ever enforced a boundary without apology. Not as a power play, not as a tactic, but because I finally believed I was worth respecting. She ghosted me 3 days later, and I didn't even flinch, because I saw it for what it was. Not rejection. Release. She wasn't looking for a man. She was looking for an emotional puppet with a penis. Someone who'd absorb her pain, make her feel safe, let her lash out, and still stick around like a loyal dog begging for scraps. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I wasn't available for that game. And guess what? That made me dangerous. You want to know what scares people the most? A man who's okay being alone. A man who doesn't need sex to feel powerful. A man who doesn't need approval to feel real. A man who stopped explaining himself. That man? He's King unpredictable. Because he's free. And you know what freedom looks like in relationships? It looks like saying no without guilt. It looks like walking away without begging. It looks like silence when someone tries to provoke you into a drama you didn't audition for. It looks like clarity. So many women, especially the ones who haven't faced their own shadows, don't know what to do with that. They're used to men bending, folding, performing. They're used to little emotional acrobats who dance for sex, praise, validation, attention. And when they meet a man who just won't, they panic. They call him cold. They say he's too in his head. They say he's not emotionally available. But what they really mean is, he doesn't need me to feel like a man, and that scares the shit out of me. But here's the twist. The right woman, the real one, she feels that difference. She feels your weight, your stillness, your grounded King energy. And instead of shrinking or attacking it, she relaxes. Not because she's submissive, not because she's less than, but because she finally senses a man who's not a project, not a fantasy, not a King emotional ATM. A man, not a mask. Let me be real with you. Most women aren't ready for this kind of man. And most men will never become him because it costs too much. It costs your identity. It costs your illusions. It costs your comfort. It costs your King ego. But when you pay that price, you become untouchable. Not in some alpha male, posturing, chest-thumping kind of way, but in the quiet, grounded, eyes wide open way that says, "I'm not here to entertain your projections." You want to know what happened next? I stopped dating. Not out of bitterness. Not out of fear. Out of respect for myself, for women, for the truth. Because I finally realized that dating, for me, had always been a survival mechanism. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for a mirror. A witness. Someone to tell me I mattered. And the second I saw that, I couldn't keep pretending. So I sat in my solitude, and I rebuilt. Not my career, not my brand, not my abs, my soul. I walked, I read, I wrote letters I never sent. I stared into mirrors at 3 a.m. and whispered things I was scared to admit. I forgave myself. I forgave her. I let go of the myth that love means possession. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt peace. Not happiness. That's fleeting. Peace. A sense of, I know who I am now. But then, something unexpected happened. Women started noticing. Not the ones looking to control. The others. The quiet ones. The ones who'd done their own shadow work. The ones who didn't need a man, but chose one anyway. They saw me. Not as a savior. Not as a villain. As a peer. And let me tell you, that's love. Not the fairy tale. Not the addiction. But the kind that says, I'll walk beside you, not ahead, not behind, not above, not below, beside. But don't get it twisted. Most of the world will still misunderstand you. They'll label you, dismiss you, project their unresolved bullshit onto you. Women will call you emotionally unavailable. Men will call you arrogant. Friends will say you've changed. And you have. You had to. Because the cost of staying the same was your king soul. I saw her across the room. No fireworks. No violin soundtrack. No Hollywood bullshit. Just stillness. And something inside me stilled too. She didn't look like the one. She looked like herself. Unapologetically. And maybe that's what made me stop breathing for a second. Because I realized she wasn't performing either. She wasn't smiling too wide. She wasn't trying to appear deep. She wasn't radiating the pick-me energy I used to chase like a junkie begging for one more hit of validation. She was just there. And so was I. And for the first time in my king life, I didn't feel the need to impress, fix, chase, or entertain. I just stood there. Fully. Completely. Me. We talked. Not the usual date conversation. No resume swaps. No trauma dump Olympics. No psychoanalyzing masked as flirtation. Just presence. She didn't fill silences with laughter. She didn't dress her insecurity up as sass. She didn't flirt to measure her power. She just spoke. And every word was like a match striking against dry soul wood. Because it burned off the last pieces of the mask I didn't even know I was still wearing. Here's the thing no one tells you about meeting someone real. It's terrifying. Not because they're scary. Because there's nowhere to hide. When someone doesn't need anything from you, not your validation, not your performance, not your emotional labor, your whole nervous system short circuits. Because now, you have to show up. Fully. No half-truths. No curated vulnerability. No calculated strength. Just you. I wanted to run. Not because I didn't want her, but because I did. And that old part of me, the part that used to seduce, charm, adapt, it started whispering, play it cool. Be what she wants. Don't say too much. And I said back, F off. I wasn't here to be chosen. I was here to meet her. That night, I didn't try to be romantic. I didn't try to build a vibe. I didn't try to impress. I told her the truth. All of it. Not in some theatrical, look how deep I am monologue. Just plainly. I told her about the man I used to be. About the boy who needed saving. About the mask I burned. About the loneliness. The death. The silence. The peace. And she didn't flinch. Didn't interrupt. Didn't praise me like I was some king evolved monk. She just listened. And when she spoke, she told me her version of the same war. She had walked through fire too. She had loved men who wanted mothers. Men who wanted mirrors. Men who wanted containers for their unresolved pain. She had been used, worshipped, abandoned, adored, ignored, all by men who didn't know who the hell they were. She told me she used to confuse intensity with connection, silence with rejection. She used to keep herself small just to avoid intimidating broken men. But not anymore. Now, she wanted truth. Not comfort. Not flattery. Not drama. Just truth. And so we sat. Two people with no masks left to hold. No scripts. No projections. No King fairy tale soundtrack. Just two sovereign, scarred, wild-ass souls looking each other dead in the eyes and saying, I see you. Not, I need you. Not, I want to fix you. Not, I think you complete me. Just, I see you. And that's the most terrifying kind of intimacy. Because it means every second is a choice. Not an addiction. Not a transaction. Not a coping mechanism. Just a choice. That's the kind of love most people never experience. Because most people never get real enough to meet it. They're too busy auditioning. Too busy managing their image. Too busy chasing their childhood wounds in adult bodies. But here's what happens when you meet someone who's done the work. They don't flinch at your intensity. They don't run from your silence. They don't get high off your drama. They don't seduce your trauma. They just be. And that being, it doesn't create fireworks. It creates fire. The slow burning kind. The kind that doesn't blind. The kind that warms. The kind that lasts. We didn't fall in love that night. We stood in it. There's a difference. Falling is gravity. Accidental. Chaotic. Unconscious. Standing in it? That's a King decision. That's presence. That's, I don't need to be here, but I choose to be. And I did. So did she. And neither of us needed to be saved. Because we had already saved ourselves. You think the hard part is finding someone real? Try staying with them. Try looking someone in the eye who sees you, not the curated version, not the charming version, not the version you use to get laid or feel deep, but you, fully unmasked and not running. Try that. And tell me it's not the most terrifying thing you've ever done. Because here's the truth most people will never admit. Real love is triggering. You think you're ready for it? You're not. Not until your nervous system has been rewired from survival mode. Not until you stop mistaking calm for boredom. Not until you stop interpreting kindness as manipulation. Not until you stop assuming that anyone who stays must be faking it. Because you've been trained by chaos. By conditional affection. By a childhood where love was unpredictable, unsafe, or transactional. So, when something real comes along, you start waiting for the catch. She was everything I claimed I wanted. Strong, open, grounded, clear. And yet, there were nights I looked at her and thought, she's going to leave. For no reason. No evidence. Just pure, unfiltered fear. A whisper in the back of my skull saying, this won't last. Don't get used to it. I started picking fights in my head. Started imagining betrayals. Started watching for microsignals of disinterest, like a sniper scanning the skyline for a threat. Because deep down, I didn't believe I deserved her. And I hated that part of me. But I didn't ignore it. Because now, I had the tools to sit with that voice and ask, where did you come from? That's when I remembered. My first girlfriend cheated on me when I was 17. Left me for a guy who understood her better. My mother praised me only when I performed. My father respected me only when I was quiet, strong, controlled. So I learned early. Be impressive, or be invisible. And the boy who learned that still lived in me. Still thought that if I wasn't constantly performing, constantly fixing, constantly being useful, then I wasn't lovable. So, when this woman showed up whole, calm, not needing me to earn my place, that boy panicked. Because this didn't fit the pattern. This wasn't the script. And the boy didn't trust anything outside the script. One night, she touched my face and said, "You don't have to do anything. You can just be here." And I flinched. Not outwardly. Not in some dramatic movie way. Internally. Like every cell in my body screamed, "What the FK do I do with that?" No checklist. No emotional performance. No role to play. Just be here. And it cracked something inside me. Because that's what I had never done. I had performed. I had earned. I had seduced. But I had never not once just existed in love without trying to control it. So I started confessing. Little by little. Not with tears and violins, but real, ugly, terrifying honesty. I told her when I felt small. I told her when I felt scared. I told her when I felt the urge to withdraw, to manipulate, to test her just to see if she'd pass. And every time, she stayed. Not to fix me. Not to rescue me. Just to witness me. That's a goddamn revolution. But it wasn't all smooth. Real intimacy brings out everything you haven't healed. It shines a flashlight on the places you thought were buried. One night I said something sharp, cold, dismissive. She called me out immediately. Not by screaming. Not by guilt tripping. She just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "That sounded like a wound talking. Not you." And she was right. I wasn't mad at her. I was mad at being seen. Because being seen meant I had to take full responsibility for my T. Not project it, not blame it, not explain it away. That's what real love demands. Not perfection. Not constant harmony. But ownership. We started building something raw. No timelines. No labels. No fantasies. Just practice. The practice of staying when it's uncomfortable. Of speaking when it's hard. Of not trying to win every emotional exchange like it's a King debate tournament. Of taking space without punishment. Of choosing each other over and over, without needing to lose ourselves in the process. It wasn't romance. It was reconstruction. Brick by goddamn brick. And the most powerful moment of all? She told me something that still echoes in my chest. "I'm not here to carry your soul, but I'll stand beside you while you carry it." That's the kind of love you don't forget. That's the kind of love that doesn't explode. It anchors. It's not loud. It's still. And that stillness, it's not boring. It's sacred. The first time I walked into a room after everything changed, I noticed something strange. People didn't recognize me. No, not physically. Not in the way you'd think. They recognized my face. But their energy? It shifted. The smiles tightened. The jokes landed differently. The conversations got shallow real fast. Because I wasn't playing the same King game anymore. And they felt it. Let me tell you something most people will never admit. When you heal, you become dangerous. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're no longer easily controlled. You're no longer swayed by guilt. You're no longer baited by shame. You don't flinch at silence. You don't apologize for existing anymore. You stop nodding when you disagree. You stop laughing when something isn't funny. You stop explaining yourself like you're on trial every time you have a King boundary. And when that happens, people get uncomfortable. I went back to visit family. They told me I seemed off. Colder. Less fun. Why? Because I wasn't telling old stories anymore. I wasn't entertaining the same cycles. I wasn't playing therapist at the dinner table. I wasn't laughing at the passive-aggressive comments anymore. I just looked at people. Still, calm, present. And it unnerved them. Because they couldn't predict me anymore. I wasn't operating out of guilt. I wasn't bending to the emotional pecking order. I had learned to say the most dangerous sentence a man can say. That doesn't work for me. You want to know how deeply conditioned most people are? Try telling someone you love that you no longer accept being emotionally manipulated. And watch how fast they turn the spotlight on you. You've changed. You think you're better than everyone. You've gotten so serious. Nah. I just stopped being agreeable as a survival tactic. I stopped folding myself into shapes that made other people feel comfortable. And for people who are used to controlling you through niceness, that's king terrifying. Even my ex reached out. She said she missed me, said I seemed different now, asked if we could talk. The old me would have jumped, would have read between the lines, would have spun that into a fantasy. But this version, this man, he saw through it. She didn't miss me. She missed who I was when I needed her. And I wasn't that man anymore. So I said, I hope you're doing well, but no, I don't think we need to talk. And I meant it. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Because once you know your worth, you stop volunteering for conversations that lead nowhere. You start to notice how much of your old life was built on unconscious contracts. Unspoken agreements that sounded like, I'll stay small if you keep liking me. I'll be quiet if you don't abandon me. I'll absorb your chaos if you pretend I'm strong. And the moment you cancel those contracts, everything shifts. The people who were addicted to your compliance, they fall away. The people who loved your brokenness more than your boundaries, they ghost. And yeah, it hurts. You'll feel the loneliness creep in like smoke under the door. But that loneliness, it's not a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're finally free. Freedom doesn't come wrapped in applause. It doesn't get celebrated on Instagram. It's quiet. It's heavy. It's sitting at a table full of people and realizing you've outgrown the conversation. And now, you either stay and shrink, or you stand and walk away. I started walking, not because I was better, because I was done. Done pretending. Done performing. Done belonging to systems that fed off my silence. You want to know how society reacts to a man who's no longer afraid to be alone? They call him everything they can't control. Cold. Narcissistic. Emotionally unavailable. Detached. Too intense. Too logical. Too much. Too little. They will say anything to get you back in the king box. Because your freedom, it reminds them they're not. And people hate mirrors that reflect the truth. So I stopped needing to be liked. And I started being respected. Not the fake kind, not the good boy praise you get for following rules. Real respect. The kind you earn by standing alone. The kind that makes people lower their voice when they speak to you. The kind that makes women stop mid-sentence because they realize you're not impressed by performance. The kind that doesn't chase approval because it's rooted in truth. But it costs you everything you thought mattered. Your circle will shrink. Your phone will go silent. You'll spend nights wondering if you get up by waking up. But over time, you'll start to see the real ones emerge. The ones who don't want a puppet. The ones who aren't threatened by your clarity. The ones who don't need you to shrink so they can shine. And when they speak, you'll know the difference instantly. Because their voice won't echo in your trauma. It'll land. Soft, solid, clean, like a bell ringing in the center of your chest. I used to think power looked loud. Big voices, big moves, big energy. I thought strength was about who could dominate the room, who got the last word, who won the argument. But that wasn't power. That was insecurity doing push-ups in the mirror. Real power? It's silent. It's the man who doesn't need to raise his voice, doesn't need to interrupt, doesn't need to prove. He just sits there, unmoved, unbothered, like a king mountain with a heartbeat. That's stillness, and it terrifies people. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It means presence. The kind of presence that makes people choose their words more carefully around you, not because you're scary, but because you see too much. You see through the games, through the projections, through the nervous energy people use to fill space they're too scared to sit in. You don't flinch. You don't chase. You just watch. And that alone changes everything. I remember sitting across from a woman I used to date months after our story had ended. She said something like, "You feel different, heavier, but in a good way." And I smiled. Because that's what stillness feels like. Wait. not emotional heaviness. Depth. It's what happens when you no longer let the world toss your soul around like a king paper cup in a hurricane. You anchor. Not to her. Not to a career. Not to an ideology. To yourself. But here's the catch. Stillness only comes after the storm. You don't wake up with it. You earn it. Through chaos. Through heartbreak. Through the kind of loneliness that chews your ego down to dust. You only become still after you've been shaken so violently by life that you realize nothing out there can give you peace. Not sex. Not praise. Not status. Not the right relationship. Not money. Not spirituality. Not King meditation retreats in Bali. Nothing. Because peace isn't found. It's chosen. Over and over. In every conversation. In every decision. In every boundary. In every moment you could lash out but don't. In every moment you could beg to be loved, and instead choose to love yourself. That's stillness. You want to know when I knew I'd crossed a line I wasn't coming back from? A woman I was seeing got upset over something trivial. She wanted me to react. To escalate. To play the emotional tennis match we've all been trained to engage in. Instead, I just said, I hear you. And I meant it. No drama. No gaslighting. No over-explaining. Just presence. And it disarmed her. She didn't know what to do with that. Because most people don't want resolution. They want reaction. They want control. And when you stop offering your nervous system as a battlefield, they either heal or they leave. Both are gifts. Stillness also changes how you speak. You stop giving advice just to sound smart. You stop fixing people who didn't ask for help. You stop trying to be the deep guy. Because you realize most people don't want truth. They want comfort. They want familiarity. They want someone to co-sign their bullshit so they don't have to grow. And when you stop offering that, they call you intense, too serious, too logical. But you don't explain yourself anymore. Because stillness doesn't owe anyone a king explanation. You also stop rushing to label every connection. You stop asking, where is this going? 3 weeks in. You stop demanding certainty from people you barely know. Instead, you just watch. You let people show you who they are, without your projections fogging the lens. You give them space to be messy, inconsistent, human. And you let yourself be that too. Because the man who has found stillness, he doesn't need a title to feel safe. He is his own container. Stillness teaches you to say no without guilt. To walk away without rage. To stay alone without panic. To be in silence without filling it with noise. To feel your emotions without being drowned by them. To sit at the center of your own life with no audience, no applause, no story to uphold and say, this is enough. It's not a destination. Stillness isn't something you arrive at and live in forever. It's a practice. One you fail at daily. One you return to hourly. Because the world will constantly tempt you to abandon yourself. But now, you know what it feels like to be whole. And once you know that, you can never again be convinced to become small. Nobody tells you this. Once you heal, you become a mirror. Not by choice, not by preaching, but by existing, by walking differently, by speaking with clarity, by not shrinking. And suddenly, people around you start to fidget, to project, to whisper, because you reflect the thing they've spent their entire king lives avoiding. The truth. You'll notice it. The way your silence threatens loud people. The way your boundaries offend the boundaryless. The way your integrity intimidates the performative. You'll walk into a room and feel it in the air, that tension, that twitch, that subtle resistance. And you'll know. They can sense that you see through them. You don't need to say it. You don't need to expose them. Your presence already does. I started noticing this in my friendships. Guys I'd known for years suddenly calling me too intense. Saying SHT like, "You're always so serious now." What they meant was, you don't play the game anymore. The game where we laugh about porn addictions and call it just being guys. The game where we pretend to be fine and crack jokes while we're falling the K apart inside. The game where we stay emotionally 15 years old and mock anyone who tries to evolve. I had stopped playing. And that made me dangerous. Because the healed man, he's not just free. He's a king threat to every broken system. The family system that thrives on guilt. The friend group that thrives on dysfunction. The dating culture that thrives on performance. The society that thrives on male silence. He threatens all of it simply by existing without apology. Because he doesn't need approval, and they don't know what to do with someone who's not emotionally blackmailable. You'll lose people. Let me say that again, so it lands. You will lose people. Not because you failed them, because you no longer match the role they wrote for you. And when that happens, they'll either 1. Try to pull you back into the script. 2. Or demonize you for walking out of it. Let them. Let them call you distant. Let them say you're not the same. Because they're right. You're not. You're awake now. And with that awakening comes a responsibility. No, not to save anyone. That's not your job. You're not here to be a guru, a coach, a father figure for emotionally stunted adults. You're here to embody what you've learned. Not to talk about it, but to live it. To be the one who doesn't react. The one who tells the king truth clear, without venom. The one who sits in the discomfort of someone else's projection and doesn't take it personally. The one who chooses solitude over fake harmony. The one who leads not with noise, but with stillness. That's leadership. I used to think leadership was about influence. Now I know. It's about clarity. And clarity cuts. It slices through bullshit. It exposes what's false. It ruins comfort. It triggers ego. And it sets people free. But only if they're ready. Most aren't. And that's okay. Because you're not here for applause. You're here for alignment. You'll start attracting new people. People who've done the work. People who've buried their parents' stories. Their cultural conditioning. Their victim narratives. People who don't need you to shrink to feel safe. People who don't flinch when you look them in the eye and say, "I don't play that game anymore." People who value truth over loyalty. Responsibility over drama. Presence over performance. That's the new tribe. Smaller. Quieter. Stronger. Men who don't need to impress. Who speak slowly. Who sit with rage instead of vomiting it on the world. Who've been through hell and came out holy, not in a religious sense, but in a real one. Holy as in whole. Integrated. Unapologetic. Clear. You'll know them when you meet them. You'll feel your nervous system exhale. Because for once, you don't have to perform either. The last conversation I had with an old friend went like this. He said, "You used to be more fun." I looked him in the eye and said, "I used to be fake." He didn't speak for a few seconds. And that silence? That was the sound of a man seeing the mirror and deciding whether to look away. He looked away. We haven't spoken since. And that's okay. Because not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next chapter. Some are just characters in the part of the story where you were still asleep. There comes a point where you stop looking outward. You stop scanning the room for approval. Stop measuring yourself by how well you're received. Stop waiting for anyone to crown you king, because you've realized you were never supposed to be ruled by anyone but yourself. That's not arrogance. That's sovereignty. That's what happens when a man finally becomes the source of his own king life. I don't wake up every day feeling healed. I still get triggered. Still feel the old urges to perform, to fix, to disappear. But now, I see them. I greet them like old ghosts who no longer possess me. Oh hey, abandonment. I see you. Sup, people, pleasing. You again? And then I let them pass. Like clouds. Because I don't attach anymore. That's the difference between healing and pretending. Pretending acts like nothing hurts. Healing knows everything still can, but chooses differently. I stopped chasing meaning through relationships. Stopped thinking love would save me. Stopped needing women to hand me a mirror. I became my own. And now, when I show up in love, it's not as a beggar. It's as a builder. When I give, it's not to be owed something. It's because I choose to. When I stay, it's not to be needed. It's because I want to. Everything is voluntary now. And that's F. King freedom. I don't teach this work. I live it. Every breath, every choice, every silence I allow, every truth I speak without shaking. This isn't about being an alpha. This is about being integrated. A man who owns his softness without apology, who holds his fire without letting it burn everyone down, who can say I'm not okay without collapsing, who can say I love you without losing himself, who can say no and sit in the discomfort of your reaction without folding. That's not strength. That's wholeness. So now I walk slower, speak less. But when I do speak, people listen. Not because I'm loud, because my words aren't seeking validation. They're grounded, clean, clear. And when people push, when they test, when they try to pull me back into old games, I smile. Not to be polite, to let them know I've already been to hell. You can't tempt me with chaos anymore. The world will keep spinning. It'll keep offering distraction. Keep whispering lies about who you should be. Keep selling fantasies about love, power, identity. And you'll be offered the mask again and again. Every time you feel lonely. Every time someone rejects your truth. Every time you're asked to make yourself smaller for the comfort of others. And every time, you'll have a choice. Put the mask back on. Or stay naked. Stay raw. Stay F. King real. I made my choice. And it cost me everything that was fake. But it gave me everything that was true. Now, I sit in silence without needing a sound. Stand in a room without needing to be seen. Love a woman without needing to be needed. Lead without shouting. Speak without performing. And live without permission. This is the part where people expect a big finale. Some motivational ending. Some tidy resolution. But this isn't that story. Because the truth, there is no finish line. Only practice. Only presence. Only the next moment where you get to choose. Do I stay awake? Or do I numb myself again? Do I chase? Or do I stand? Do I perform? 8. Or do I tell the truth? You want legacy? Here it is. Be the man you needed when you were a boy. Not the strongest. Not the richest. Not the most liked. The truest. The man who doesn't flinch. Who doesn't flee. Who doesn't fold. The man who walks with no audience. And still walks. Because that's the man who is finally free. Not because the world changed, but because he did. This has been your journey. Your fire. Your rebirth. And now, it's your turn. To choose. To walk. To lead. Without the mask. Without the noise. Without the F. King script. Just you. Fully. Finally. You.